Joining me now, Michael Knowles, the host of the Michael Knowles Show at the Daily Wire. Michael, great to have you back on the show, sir.
Great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Nancy Mace is mounting this fight. Speaker Johnson looks like he's coming around to it, but boy, it's nice to see that members of Congress aren't really suffering the nonsense quite as much anymore.
That's right. Nancy Mace deserves a lot of credit. You know, I first was plugged into this story about a week or so ago, and I couldn't believe that nobody was talking about it. That for the first time ever, you had a trans-identifying man be elected to Congress. I guess everyone was so focused on the Trump landslide, they didn't pay attention. But at the time, I did a long Twitter thread that went viral, and I said, this is going to become a big issue because this man is obviously going to try to use the women's bathroom, and it's going to put Republicans in a tough spot. The Republicans have exactly two options. They can allow this guy to violate women's rights and enter the women's bathroom over the objections of women, and in doing so, they will be implicitly accepting the trans ideology, or they can say, no, sorry, Buster, we're going to be nice to you, but you can't just go violate women's spaces, and you're not allowed to traipse into the women's bathroom, and then the press will call them mean. And those are the only two options. There's really not much else they can do here. So I said, look, leadership has to hold firm on this. Will a member of Congress actually stand up? And it took a few days before we heard very much. And Nancy Mace maybe was working on this in the background. Nancy Mace came out and said, well, of course, this is completely insane. And really the only scandal here, the only extremism as far as I'm concerned, is that every other member of the GOP in the House has not come to her defense. She is 100% right about this. I hope and I trust that Speaker Johnson will end up on the right side of this, and I think he is coming around even in his rhetoric on it. But this is a no-brainer.
Yes.
As a matter of justice, this man has no right to use the women's bathroom. And as a matter of politics, the vast majority of Americans reject the radical trans ideology. So I expect Republicans to line up and do the right thing.
And the sooner you arrive at acknowledging reality, the easier it is to sort through all of these issues, Michael Knowles, as they confront you.
Of course. The nice thing about sticking with the truth is you don't have to get caught up in all sorts of confusion.
Yes.
And the truth here is plain as day. A man can't become a woman can't become a man. I said earlier when Speaker Johnson was catching a lot of flack for his initial milquetoast response, I said, look, I don't mind if Speaker Johnson doesn't want to take the reporter's bait, as long as he does the right thing. And I hope he will do the right thing, and it seems like he will. But this is not a complex issue. There are nuanced, complicated questions in politics, in a nation of 330 million people and a global empire. But should a man be able to enter the women's room? That isn't one of them. And so Tim McBride, this Delaware congressman who identifies as a woman, he has come out and he said that he wants respect from his colleagues and people should be kind to him. And I have no doubt that his future Republican colleagues will show him quite a lot of respect. But respect goes both ways, okay? And I think all of the women on Capitol Hill who have their own bathrooms for a reason, who have their own changing areas, say, for a reason, they're not just going to give up all of their rights to accommodate the fantasies and disordered perceptions and desires of a member of Congress.
Well, and the other piece here, as you point out, is that they're all open to criticism, especially being people who wield power for the country and being public figures. But I guarantee that the Tim McBride character will never receive half the animus that Nancy Mace has received as a Republican member of Congress. And in fact, here's an expression of that. Today, Nancy Mace shared a video of a man who says that he too is a transgender woman, and he says that he wants to kill Nancy Mace. Take a listen to this.
This video goes out to Congresswoman Nancy Mace. Congresswoman Nancy Mace, I hope that one day I do find you in that women's bathroom and I grab your ratty-looking hair and drag your face down to the floor while I repeatedly bash it in until the blood's everywhere and you're dead. Thank you. I hope that Nancy Mace receives this message well.
So you look at this whole story and you say, okay, tell me again, who's supposed to be the victim here?
Of course, but this is an upside-down world. So if you're the sort of person who thinks a man can become a woman, then, yeah, you're going to mistake the victim for the perpetrator here. There's no question about it. I mean, by definition, if you think that you are the opposite sex, there's a defect with your intellect. You're suffering some kind of mental or psychiatric illness. And so we're willing to be accommodating to people. I'm not even suggesting Tim McBride should be expelled from Congress, although he manifestly, is not fit to be a member of Congress. But of course, if we took mental defects as a disqualifying feature, probably we'd lose half of our government. So, of course, I'm not calling for anything that radical. I think the radicalism here is the people who say that women are no longer able to have their own spaces because men are making greater demands, men who clearly don't have much grip on reality.
Yeah, and also there's no other health condition that I'm aware of where deception is a required feature of it. I was looking, for instance, the fact that this guy's name is actually Tim McBride. Do you realize that it's a bit challenging to establish that on a cursory Google search? I was looking this up. I was saying, what's Sarah McBride's real name? And Wikipedia refuses to tell you. If you go to the Wikipedia thing, because Wikipedia has a policy against what they refer to as dead naming. And in fact, if you go to the edit history of Sarah McBride's Wikipedia page, which I did because I'm insane, and I'm looking through this, I'm seeing that there have been countless people who've attempted to include that real piece of information, and it keeps on being purged by Wikipedia's editors who are refusing to acknowledge that there's a person called Tim McBride, Michael Knowles.
Of course, but this is part of the key, and it's why Republicans. I know we want to be nice. Nobody wishes ill on this guy or anybody else, but we can't indulge in delusion. It's not good for anyone, including the people who identify this way, because the deception here requires that we call this man by a woman's name and we use female pronouns. We refer to him as a trans woman, quote unquote, and the reason for that is, if someone is a trans woman, they obviously have the right to use the women's bathroom. That's a type of a woman, right? But he's not a trans woman. He's a man who is confused. If someone's name is Sally or Sarah or Sheila, that's the sort of person who probably uses the women's bathroom. But a guy whose name is Tim, he doesn't get to use the women's bathroom. Yeah. What the left has done, I made this point in my book a few years ago, Speechless, what the left does is use euphemisms to win debates before they're even had. So if you call an illegal alien, he obviously has no right to be here. If you all of a sudden call him a future undocumented dreaming American or something like that, well, then in people's perception, they do have a right to be here. And so it seems like a trivial matter, the bathrooms and the pronouns and the names or whatever, but the left knows it's not a trivial matter. That's why they invest so much time and energy in it. That's what wins debates.
Sure, and these are considered kind of the innocent provocations, but they're used as a predicate for all sorts of awful things. That's how you end up with men in women's prisons who are there in some cases for actually committing sexual abuse in the first place, subsequently committing sexual abuse on women who are there in the prisons. This is how you end up with boys on girls sports teams, injuring them for the rest of their lives. This is how you end up mutilating children as if this is some sort of consistent and legitimate piece of health care. So these are the moments where you should step up and say, no, let's be really clear about what this is, because all sorts of awful things spill out of it if you don't.
That's right. It reminds me of the old George Carlin quote. He said that if fascism comes to America, it won't be with jackboots and black shirts. It will be with a smiley face T-shirt and Nike sneakers. Smiley, smiley. And that's so often what we're hearing from the left is, oh, just be nice, be accommodating, be respectful, be kind. Well, what is kind about subjecting a woman who has herself been the victim of sexual violence, in this case, Congressman Nancy Mace? What is kind about forcing her to share private spaces with men in women's-only spaces? What is kind about castrating a little kid? What is kind about forcing a girl on a volleyball team to be concussed and paralyzed, in fact, because she's forced to compete against a man? It is not kind to force people into fantasies. And it certainly is not kind to force people to lie, which is what this transgender agenda is forcing upon all of us.
Yeah, for sure. Michael Knowles, one of my favorites. So grateful, as always, to chat with you. Thank you, sir, for being on the program today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. A pleasure as always.
That's Michael Knowles of the Michael Knowles Show.